Good morning. My name is Rodrigo Priego. I am responsible for the initial airworthiness standards and specification section. And today is the second time for me as a speaker in a conference like this one. I do remember very well the first time, which was last year. We were only speaking in front of cameras, completely different setup. So also warm welcome from my side to those of you who could make it to Cologne today, and warm welcome to the conference to those that are attending online. So this session is going to be about rulemaking, about regulatory changes. We're not going to speak about all the regulatory changes we do. We're going to focus on changes affecting Regulation 748 of 2012, also known as Part 21. In the section, we also coordinate together with colleagues in the directorate changes to other pieces of regulation. For example, Part 26 or the certification specifications. If you want to know more about those, I encourage you to take a look at our European Plan for Aviation Safety, which is where we have the details of all the rulemaking tasks that we do. The European Plan for Aviation Safety is going to be updated in the next month. To talk about rulemaking, we propose to split the next hour in 3 parts. During the first part, I will be walking you through all the projects that we have ongoing, touching upon Part 21. I will tell you briefly what they are about and where we are, what is particularly the next step that you can expect. And then we will have an in-depth session to speak about safety management systems in Part 21. And for that, I will be joining my colleagues, Jean-Pierre and Yuri, who are already prepared. And towards the end of the session, we will open the floor and we will take on questions that, as you have heard, you can submit to us through a slide. So let's get started. But before I do that, before I go to my next slide, I would like to share a short story with you. Every day before I come to the office, I take my 2 children to school. My son, he is now 7 years old, likes to play a game with me. And every morning, he's asking me a why question. I think lately he's asking a lot, why do I have to go to school? So then I try to come up with an answer. I think the answer I give is so that you can learn new things. And then he will continue with another why question. So why do I have to learn new things? And he will go on and on until I eventually give up. I think my record is 6 or 7 questions. He has a lot of fun doing this. Now you're probably wondering, what does it have to do with Regulation 748? Well, this little game is the one that made me realize that from a young age, we're wired to know the purpose of why we do things. And this is what inspired my next slide. So what I try to do in the first slide, before I give you the details of every single rulemaking project, is to have a reflection on why we changed the rules in the first place, why we changed the initial airworthiness rules. So I went through all the projects that we have ongoing and came up with at least 3 categories. I'm sure there are more, and if you find them, please tell me, of why in the first place we have to change the rules. And the first category, I think it's no surprise, is to address safety issues. And I think we can say that addressing safety is our core activity, and it's underlying all the activities that we do in the agency. But of course, our knowledge on safety issues keeps evolving as we do research, as we get information from the investigation of accidents and serious incidents. One example of today is that our systems are getting more and more interconnected. And this is why you're going to hear me talking about cybersecurity. We are now in the process of addressing cybersecurity for organizations because cybersecurity threats can also have an impact on safety. Another example could be our proposal to address the risk of aging aircraft structures for large airplanes. The second category that I was able to come up with is the introduction of new technology. And I'm sure we're going to hear very good examples today on how new technology is being introduced in the system. The one example that I will mention is the NPA that we published in June of this year to adapt Part 21 for the certification of UAS, as well as the command unit that controls the UAS. So this is one such example. The third category, I label it proportionality. There are circumstances in which we already have the rules. The framework is there. It's been there for quite a while. But we find opportunities to adapt it a bit better to the risks that we're trying to mitigate. And this is what is behind our Part 21 Light proposal, in which we try to come up with a more proportionate process for the initial airworthiness of certain products that are, in theory, supposed to pose less risks to the system than other more complex products. I'm talking about aircraft that are primarily intended for sport and recreation. So keep in mind these three categories as I go through the slides. See if you can map them through the projects that I'm going to mention. But before I move on, I wanted to mention feedback. Feedback, I think it's very important. It's for me what today is about, to hear from you what is working well and what is not working so well. When it comes to rulemaking, there are many opportunities to get feedback. In addition to events like this one, we also have rulemaking groups in which we collaboratively draft rulemaking proposals with many of you. We have a structure of advisory bodies in which many of you are represented, and there we discuss our rulemaking proposals and take feedback. We also take feedback when we publish a notice of proposed amendment, and based on your comments, we're able to develop an opinion or a decision. I'm moving now to speak about specific projects, and I'm going to start speaking about those that are more mature, meaning for these projects, I think it's actually one, we already have an opinion published, the amending regulation on the Commission side is also published, and the rules have already become applicable. This is the one stemming from Regulation 699 of 2021, and if you remember, this regulation was addressing three topics. The first topic, what we did there is to make the instructions for continuing airworthiness part of the type certificates, to improve the control, to clarify responsibilities, and therefore they are now subject to the same procedures as the type certificates are subject to. Second issue that we address is to make it possible that certain parts for which a non-compliance will pose a negligible safety impact can be manufactured outside of the production environment, meaning with a Form 1, and they can also be installed on an aircraft with a Form 1. So proportionality is coming here. And the third issue that we're trying to address is to make it mandatory for design approval holders that they produce the data and the information to address risks like fatigue and corrosion for large airplanes, and also that they make this information available to operators so that they can include that in their maintenance manuals. So there were changes to Part 26 already needed. You have now on the screen the two opinions that originated these changes. As I mentioned before, Regulation 699 of 2021 is the one that amended Part 21. Part 21 was not the only rule that needed to be amended. The continuing airworthiness regulation was also amended, and as I mentioned, Part 26 was also amended. Acceptable means of compliance and guidance material are available, and the changes have already become applicable. The aging aircraft requirements became applicable last year, and this year, the requirements for ICAs and parts with a Form 1 are applicable. So we can say that here we are at the end of the regulatory process. Of course, it means that we move now to support implementation. And for that, I wanted to make you aware of some information items that you will find on our website to support these changes. So if you go to our page where we publish the opinions, by the way, you're going to get a copy of the presentation and you will have the links. You will see a couple of short videos that we have developed in less than 50 minutes. You can get a glimpse of what the provisions for ICAs and Form 1 are about. We have updated our frequent asked questions for ICAs with many of the questions that we have received from you. And we have also published a certification memorandum to clarify how the assessment that a part non-compliance will have a non-significant safety effect on the aircraft can be made with additional guidance. So that's on our website, and I encourage you to have a look. I'm shifting gears now. I'm going to speak about three projects in a similar stage for which we have already published an opinion. The amending regulations are also published, but they are not yet applicable. So I would like to tell you where we are and what are the next steps for these three projects. First project is, of course, safety management systems in Part 21. Actually, Part 21 is the last domain in our regulatory framework for which we are implementing safety management systems. The previous one was Part 145, for which the requirements have become applicable this month. Safety management systems, in summary, is a bit putting the elements that you are seeing now on the screen, which are the core elements of an SMS, next to the elements that we already have. So next to the design assurance system for design organizations and the quality management system for production. So integrating these two frameworks is, in a nutshell, what it is about. The changes stem from the opinion that we published in 2020. The implementing and delegated regulations have been published by the Commission this year, and they set the applicability date. The applicability date is set 1 year later, so the changes become applicable in March of 2023. After that, organizations will have 2 extra years to close any findings that are raised by authorities. So where are we now? We are working on developing the acceptable means of compliance and guidance material to support the implementation, and these are going to come out in 2 packages. There will be one first package that we are intending to publish still before the end of the year, so in a few days. And in this package, you will already see the AMCs and guidance material for the design management systems and the production management systems, as well as for occurrence reporting, for example. So the core elements will be there. The remaining AMCs and guidance material will be published at the beginning of 2023. Like I said, I'm going to be speaking about SMS with my 2 colleagues in a few minutes. I'm moving now to speak about information security. So what we are regulating is cybersecurity provisions for organizations and authorities. The similar requirements for product safety are already in place. First difference that I want to mention in regards to the SMS provisions is that we are trying to issue the same set of requirements across all domains. So this is not only a change that affects Part 21, production and design, but also continuing airworthiness, operators, training organizations, and so on and so forth. The opinion was published in 2021. I'm not sure you can all see that. The delegated regulation has been published by the Commission. The implemented regulation is not yet published. It will be published very soon, but that also gives us an idea of the applicability date. And here is the second difference with SMS. Applicability is, in this case, in 3 years, in 2025. So this is giving, I think, a bit more time for organizations and authorities to adapt to the changes. Where are we now? We are developing the acceptable means of compliance and guidance material, and these will be published in 2023. They have to be consulted through our advisory bodies, and there will be a workshop during the consultation to explain the content of the package. I also want to make you aware that for these 2 areas, SMS and ISMS, we have started a number of pilot projects with a few design organizations with at least 2 objectives. First of all, to make sure that what organizations already have in place, I'm speaking more for SMS, is already known to us. And secondly, to make sure that the requirements we're proposing can be implemented in a smooth manner. So that will continue also in 2023. And I'm moving to speak about the third regulatory package, which is at the same stage, which is our so-called Part 21 Light provisions. So like I said before, Part 21 Light provisions is about introducing proportionality for the certification of a specific type of products, those that are primarily intended for sport and recreation, because the assumption is that they pose less risks in comparison to other more complex products. And for that, we have new tools in the basic regulation, which we are trying to make use, or which we have take advantage of when building the proposal for Part 21 Lights. So this is the possibility for the product to receive a declaration of design compliance against certain standards in lieu of certificates, and for the organizations to become a declared organization, production and design, instead of an approved organization. So that's, in a nutshell, the provisions that you will see when you read the Part 21 Light proposal. The provisions were published in an opinion in 2021. Here, the implementing and delegated regulations have been published by the Commission in August of this year. And again, this is setting the applicability date. They will become applicable in August of 2023. So where are we now? We are developing the AMCs and guidance material that we intend to consult in the course of 2023 with you. And the way we're going to do it is by organizing a number of tailored workshops tackling all the topics with you. We will invite you through the advisory bodies. We will be getting feedback through these workshops, and with that, we will publish the final proposal in the second quarter of 2023 ahead of the applicability. I'm coming to the end of this part and shifting gears again. I'm going to talk about a couple of projects for which we have not yet published an opinion. And I would like to tell you where we are and when you can expect the opinion or the final document to be published. The first one I have also mentioned to the introduction, so remember the innovation category. In June of this year, we published an NPA to adapt Part 21 for the certification of EASA. Especially one of the things we tried to came up with is how to certify the so-called common unit. This NPA was not only proposing amendments to Part 21, it also includes continuing airworthiness requirements for UAS that are operated in the specific category, and it also contains operational requirements, so amending the OPS regulation for VTOL-capable aircraft. We have received more than 1,000 comments in total in this proposal, a bit more than 200 only in Part 21, which we are now in the process of analyzing. And you can expect an opinion to be published in the second quarter of next year. Here again, we are already started to work in the AMC and guidance material, and the consultation of this AMC and GM will take place through an NPA that we will also make public in 2023. Final slide on this part is going back to the feedback, importance of feedback. With the feedback that we receive from you and from the ones implementing the rules, we have a systematic project to update the acceptable means of compliance and guidance material. And we are preparing an NPA to be published in the second quarter of next year, which will take into consideration input that we have received, opportunities to clarify the guidance, to enlarge it. It will be touching both on production and design developments. And with this, I close the regulatory updates, and I will be joining now my colleagues to speak about safety management systems in Part 21. So good morning, Jean-Pierre. Good morning, Yuri. I think we're going to start with Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre works in the FS Directorate in flight standards, and he has a lot of experience in SMS. He works as a safety management expert, has been part of the development of ICAO Annex 19, has seen the implementation of SMS in other domains, and he is the one ensuring that there is consistency across all domains. So let me ask you the first question. Do you still remember why it was decided to have a dedicated ICAO annex? And we know that ICAO annexes don't come out very often on SMS. And do we have similar examples of safety management provisions in other domains?
Thank you, Rodrigo, for your question. In fact, SMS and safety risk management is already the norm in many industrial sectors, such as oils and gas, chemical industry, hospital as well. After a number of accidents, it has been made mandatory for this, in this domain to implement an SMS. I can quote the Chernobyl disaster, for instance, or the Challenger shuttle accident. In aviation, we have had two unfortunate accidents, which is the Pinnacle one in 2004 and the Colgan air crash in 2009. And what is interesting when we look at all these accidents is that the contributing factors always point to the setup of the organization, the managerial decision or technical decisions that have been detrimental to safety. So that's exactly why ICAO decided to establish a new annex, and this was published in 2013. covering all the spectrum of approved organization, including design organization and production organization.
Thanks. Before I go to the next question, let me make sure that I get the control. So here is a bit a summary of what we are talking about. Second question for you, Jean-Pierre. In Part 21, we already have provisions to ensure product safety. So why do we need an SMS? And what is really a safety management system?
And what is the difference with product safety? To understand that question, we have to look back to the safety record and the way safety was managed in the past. On the screen, you have an ICAO graphic that shows that after the Second World War, aviation, the number of accidents and fatalities decreased thanks to the reliability of the products that have been significantly improved. But SMS is not reliability of product, and reliability is not product safety. You have seen requirement CS 251309 that progressively has shifted from product safety to aircraft system in order to increase safety. And later, we started to take into account the importance of human factors. The end users, accidents were always pointing to failure of the crew, but there was much more to consider than just human performance. And that's exactly what SMS is about. I was mentioning earlier contributing factors. They have been left behind because the organizational setup may have played a big role in these accidents. So this is exactly what SMS is about, is to start to take into account factors, some financial decision. How does it impact the delivery of safe product? Time pressure, all these kind of things. So, in a nutshell, we want in the future to better address identification and mitigation of risk. Rachel was previously mentioning that we are entering a world where nothing is predictable, so we have to remain alert. We have to identify these risks. We have to mitigate those risks. We have to assess how these mitigation actions are effective. We have to remain alert to any kind of signals that allow us to detect area of weaknesses. So this is safety promotion and also safety objective set up by the organization. These are the 4 pillars that you have introduced earlier today. And I would add to that data intelligence play a big role in the future because we will be better at identifying signals of weaknesses and how it has to be managed at the level of the organization.
Thanks a lot, Jean-Pierre. So Yuri is a rulemaking officer in my section. He has a lot of experience in initial airworthiness, and he's, I dare to say, the force behind the Part 21 related changes related to SMS. So can you tell us how is SMS reflected in Part 21, Yuri?
Yes, so the changes to Part 21 with regard to SMS entered into force in March this year, and it will become applicable as of 7th of March 2023, so in exactly 3 months from today. After that, the affected organizations will have until 7th of March 2025 to demonstrate full compliance with the SMS requirements. In terms of applicability, SMS in Part 21 is applicable only to approved design organization and production organization. So in clear, it means that it is not applicable to alternative procedures to DOA. And also, we have mentioned Part 21 Lite. SMS requirements have not been implemented into Part 21 Lite. Now, when it comes to design organization, approved design organization, point 21A239 is not the only one, but if I may say, the requirement in Part 21 where we find most of the SMS pillars and elements that we have mentioned before. So with SMS, next to the well-known design assurance elements, we find now safety management elements. And to remind few of them, firstly, the fact that the management system needs to correspond to the size and the complexity of the organizations. The need for safety policy and safety objectives, the need for key safety personnel, the reporting of occurrences, and all this in a just culture environment.
Thanks, Yuri. But in practical terms, what does it mean? So I am already an approved organization. I'm sure this is the case for many of the participants. What do I need to add or change in this case?
Okay. Here we would advise the organization to perform a gap analysis between what they have already in place in the organization versus what is required with the SMS regulation. For instance, the organization has already in place a system for the reporting of occurrences by the staff required to do so because of their function. Now with SMS, the organization would need to ensure that this reporting tool, this reporting system is also made available to all the staff in the organization, and of course that this staff is aware of this possibility offered to them. But it is important to say that this gap analysis should not only focus on what is not yet in place in the organization. It should also assess the level of maturity of what the organization has already in place. There are already some tools available or which will be made shortly available to help performing this gap analysis. For instance, we have the EASA management system assessment tool, which is currently being updated to fit to the Part 21 requirements. There is also the SMS maturity assessment tool, which is attached as an appendix to the industry standard developed for the implementation of SMS into design organizations. When the organization, let's say, will have performed this gap analysis, it will discuss then with its DOA team leader on the magnitude of the changes, the organizational changes which are required to comply with SMS, and then they will agree on the classification of this change and on the steps for implementing the change.
Thank you, Yuri. Jean-Pierre, back to you. So Yuri has just mentioned before the term just culture. This is something that we hear a lot. So what is really just culture? Is it the same as safety culture?
Oh, that's a good question. We don't have a definition at ICAO level of safety culture. They speak of positive safety culture, but no definition. Fortunately, there are a number of definitions around, and forgive me my memory capabilities. A commonly used definition for safety culture is a set of enduring values, behaviors, and attitudes regarding safety management shared by every member at each level of an organization. And considering that definition, there are a number of sub-elements. A safety culture policy is made of. If I had to quote one, I would start with reporting culture and learning culture. It is important that every member of an organization has the possibility, the option to signal any safety issue within the organization. It's important to collect occurrences. I was mentioning data intelligence. How do we take that into account without any fears of reprisal? Everybody should be in a position to signal something, to flag out something going wrong or potentially going wrong without any blaming. And this is what we call just culture, where there is a need here, for sure, to draw a line between what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And this is where the manager plays a big role in terms of leadership, and the commitment of the head of design is also fundamental to support that policy. So I think we have prepared a slide so that you can bring it home. You will find plenty of information how to implement your safety culture policy, and how to find the different elements supporting safety culture, such as just culture.
Thanks, Jean-Pierre. Let me ask you another question. So like we said before, we have a regulatory framework in place for the certification of products. So I think we can say that some risks are already mitigated through this process. Do you have a specific example of a hazard or of a risk that is not currently addressed through this process, and that would be typically addressed or captured through a safety management system?
So again, I'm not going to focus on the product safety, but at the level of the organization. We have to better understand the impact of financial decision, economic decision, commercial decision. How does it impact the workload in case of budgetary issue? How is it going to impact the availability of staff? We are all facing a shortage of staff everywhere, and we are in a very competitive environment. So if I would go to, for instance, COVID-19, which has been a big crisis that we are not even out of that. We have seen staff stuck at home. We have seen retirement of staff, sometimes massive retirement of staff. We have seen key staff having the knowledge leaving the company. So all these aspects, how does it impact the safe delivery of the product? And generally speaking, management of change, the way we have to rethink operations and services during disruptive events is something to consider in the frame of SMS. So if I had to go to give a kind of technical hazard, I will, for instance, mention the role that the supplier chain play. And especially nowadays with the war in Ukraine, the energy crisis, the rate of inflation, all these kind of things, so it's painful for the organization. And in terms of business model, how are you going to take that into consideration? So this is one big technical hazard to consider. And another source of hazard identification are what I was mentioning earlier, these unfortunate accident. So I have some unfortunate lessons learned, for instance, from flight tests that end up in a disaster. Misuse of product by the end user. So as design organization, we have to understand how we can improve our product, or sometimes how we are to improve services connected to this product, such as sufficient information in the flight manual, good maintenance instruction, identification of training elements. I speak of variants and OSD, all these kinds of things.
Thanks a lot for the examples, Jean-Pierre. Back to you, Yuri. I have mentioned before that Part 21 is indeed the last domain in which we are implementing SMS. So a possible scenario is that an organization has different approvals, and through another approval, a non-Part 21 approval, they already have an SMS system. So how can they adapt this system to their design or production aspects as well?
They cannot. No, okay. First, the organization shall determine, of course, the best way to structure their management system in order to fit their organizational needs and business needs. In any case, the management system requirements have been aligned to the best extent possible among the different aviation domains. And indeed, the need is to ensure that, on one hand, one organization which needs to comply with SMS requirement in different domains can indeed implement a single management system. And on the other hand, we have the competent authorities which needs to oversee different organizations and in different domains sometimes, so they can perform their oversight activity based on the same regulatory principles. So we try to ensure this. And actually, we do believe that a single integrated management system would maximize synergies and at the same time mitigate the potential risks at interface level. So integration of the management system is for us key. Integration of an integrated management system may also mean for some organizations the integration of other systems, such as what we have mentioned before in the update, so the information security management system. So all this can be integrated.
Thanks, Yuri. You have spoken about competent authorities. So Jean-Pierre, maybe you can tell us what is going to be the impact in terms of oversight, what is changing when it comes to oversight.
Yeah, if we can display the next slide, in fact, SMS is a game changer because the paradigm was focus on compliance to the rule, but SMS now change a little bit the game. How does the organization manage safety and area of greater risk? Which means what are the risks in the organization? How are they mitigated? Are the mitigation action effective? And how do we know that these mitigation actions are effective? Yuri previously was mentioning the gap analysis. So this is what the organization should try to do answering this question and implementing an SMS. And as from 7th of March 2023, the DOA team leader will visit your organization and will ask you how have you started to implement SMS. What is different with the traditional 3 months time period to close the finding is that with SMS and with this new piece of regulation, you as design organization, you will have until the 7th of March 2025 to close, to propose first a satisfactory corrective action plan and then to close findings, so before 7 March of 2025. And for the organization who has already started the initial certification, we are not going to ask for this organization to implement the SMS elements. We will also organize a due diligence due to the fact that we are going to publish the AMC and the guidance material a little bit late. That was the first package that you were mentioning. So yes, we will provide flexibility. We will train our our DOA team leader, and we will publish also a surveillance guidance. You can expect that document to be ready beginning of next year.
Thank you very much to both of you. So I hope that with this exchange has given you a bit more information about the spirit that we have used in developing the proposal. Like we said, AMCs and guidance material are coming out soon. It's probably not the end of SMS, it's the start maybe of another journey. Like I mentioned before, we have pilot projects ongoing. We are also in discussions with other authorities on how they go about implementing SMS requirements, and we will be working with you on the implementation of SMS. And this is the end of this part of the session. I think we can open now the questions and answers.
Yes, thank you all. So if we can go to the questions. Okay, are parts without Form 1 accepted by other authorities?
I can answer that one.
Thanks, Rodrigo.
So the straight answer is no. They are not accepted, and therefore we are working with them on what it means, and probably this will require an amending to our chip to make sure that the changes can be accepted through the bilaterals.
Okay, thank you. Is it still considered as a significant change? I think that means change to introduce parts without Form 1. I don't know. Alex, can you help us with that one?
Good morning, everyone. Alexandru Enache, EASA Senior Regulation Officer. Yeah, I will try to help a little bit with this answer, talking on behalf of my colleagues, DOA team leaders in the DOA department. The same principle which have been presented by, I think Yuri mentioned first, for SMS implementation applies in this case as well. So each DOA should assess the impact of introducing the system to identify parts which do not require EASA Form 1 and to list these parts in instruction for continuing airworthiness. And depending on this impact on their design assurance system, they have to interface with their DOA team leader and establish if it's a significant change to their design assurance system or not. So my recommendation will be this one. Please review your procedures and then, depending on the result, discuss with your DOA team leader. So it's not black and white, significant change or no significant change. Okay. There is no such by definition, but yes, if you have reviewed with your DOA team leader the case, the impact on your DOA, and the conclusion is significant change, you should go for applying for a significant change approval.
Thanks, Alex. So will EASA provide the same level of support to industry regarding implementation of SMS for Part 21 as with previous changes, i.e. workshops, website, frequently asked questions?
Do you want to take it?
Okay, I will start and maybe you can make the buzz, Rodrigo. Yes, we will propose support to the industry regarding implementation of SMS. We will develop safety promotion material. We will develop frequently asked questions. We are going to populate our website with guidance material. And in terms of workshop, Rodrigo, would you like to say a word about that?
Yes. So the answer is definitely yes. There's a lot of work ongoing to support the implementation. Maybe more than we have mentioned. I've mentioned pilot projects, which is an excellent opportunity for us to learn, and we can foresee the organization of a workshop indeed in 2023 once the AMC and guidance material are published. We have to select the date, but for sure next year will be all about implementation. So the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. And the next one, so use of the FAQ for releasing specific GM, e.g. classification of change affecting battery. What is the regulatory status of these FAQ? Can we be subject to a finding? So from my point of view, it is just additional guidance to what is there in AMC and GM, and if we feel that we need to update and clarify further in the AMC and GM, then that will follow on at a subsequent time. But the FAQ allows us to get out further guidance, shall we say, but not formal guidance, just advice on how we do it. So then I would say, can they be subject to a finding? As I say, it's a clarification. It depends. If it's clarifying what's there for it in the AMC and GM, then it's really there trying to clarify to the users of it what that material really means. Then hopefully you should take that into account in how you react to the AMC and GM, and then the appropriate follow-up will follow in that regard. That's what I'd say on that one. Do you have anything else to add to that, Rodrigo?
Maybe what I can add to that is that FAQs is indeed one more tool to provide clarification. Eventually, it's also a source that is telling us that maybe additional guidance is needed, and with time, many of the FAQs find its way into the regulation. As you have seen, it takes a bit of time to update the rules, but yeah, eventually things that are not clear need to be worked on will be clarified through guidance material and AMC. That's the intent.
Okay, thank you. So SMS again. So I think this is similar to the other earlier one. So the GM AMC will be released by December. The regulation comes into force by 7th of March. The time frame is short. How will this be handled on the EASA side? I think we clarified something on that side. Do we want to add anything else at this stage? We've mentioned workshops and the like. Any other aspects to add here?
So we are fully aware of the short time, and of course this will be taken into consideration when we go to implementation. I don't want to speak on behalf of my colleagues who will be in charge of implementing SMS. But I think that the idea is to gradually introduce SMS in oversight systems. Maybe if we look at our own needs, we will also have to train our own DOA team leaders on the implementation of SMS. So we're fully aware that it will take time, and we will use next year to gradually ensure the implementation with support, like we mentioned before, through pilot projects, through an additional workshop. It will continue to be discussed through our regular channels, and if we see a need to come up with additional guidance, we can always do that.
Okay, thanks, Rodrigo.
For sure, we will not start the oversight from 7 or 8 of March in 2023, so it will be gradual, but first, your DOA team leader is your focal point, so contact them. If it is not yet done, start to discuss with them on your view and plan for implementation, and we see how all this will be handled for each cases.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Is it considered as a significant change, the introduction of SMS for the DOA? So Alex, is there anything you can say in addition on that? Sorry.
Yeah, I think Yuri already answered during the discussions a few minutes ago on this. And he recommended, and I will repeat this, each DOA should do their own gap analysis and see what is needed in addition to what they have already in place, some of them, and establish a plan for implementation and discuss with the DOA team leader to reach an agreement on the approach applicable, significant change or no significant change.
Thank you. So the next one, SMS, ISMS pilots are delayed. Will EASA wait until these pilot projects are finished to consider the outcomes in more feasible AMC GM? Rodrigo, do you want to
Yes,
start?
I can say something about that. So, yes, indeed, the availability of AMC and guidance material, it's having an impact on the pilot projects. We are able to progress a bit faster with those organizations who already have something in place because it will already allow us to start the conversation. But of course, it's natural to expect that they will continue to run throughout 2023. It's very difficult to preempt what will come out. For example, we see also an opportunity for us to identify training needs in our own DOA team leaders and develop our training material. But indeed, the purpose is to check that the material that we will publish, so the guidance material and the rules are clear. And of course, if they are not, the feedback will be taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you. On which basis findings are to be raised against SMS requirements without AMC yet published at applicability date? Jean-Pierre?
Yeah, I can start to give some elements for that question. So as explained by Yuri, we will publish this SMS-related AMC before Christmas, or that's a target. I was explaining also that we will exercise due diligence and flexibility. We are currently training our DOA team leaders, and the first legal basis are the implementing rules, which are already in place and applicable. So basically, the findings, if there is a need to raise finding, will be first against the implementing rule, then against this first package of AMC and guidance material that we are going to publish very, very soon. Having said that, the organization will have time to propose corrective action until 7th of March 2025. So I hope it will be enough time for the organization.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the definition of ICA is not clear in the Part 21, and FAA has a different definition. Is there a plan to harmonize the definition of ICA?
I can also say something.
Okay, thanks.
So not only for ICA, we have an ongoing discussion with the FAA and with other authorities on harmonizations at all levels of our regulatory framework, also at certification and specifications. And yes, we know that this is one particular area in which we have a difference. We are aware of so-called an ARC activity on the FAA side on this matter. So this item is an item on discussion on our harmonization exchanges. And we will be discussing this with the FAA.
Okay, thanks, Rodrigo. Implementation of SMS in small or medium-sized organizations is supposed to be flexible, but will the EASA still impose a minimum set of requirements?
I will answer that.
Yes.
I like the question. No organization is immune to risk. So it's clear that SMS apply to any kind of organization, should it be a small one, a large one, should the activities be complex or non-complex. That has to be very, very clear. However, in terms of implementation, it doesn't mean that a small organization will have to set up a big machine. They don't necessarily need to buy a software to record the occurrences, analysis of these events, and so on and so on. We have provided also flexibility in the rules in terms of compliance monitoring function and safety manager, and even in a very, very small organization, it might be possible the head of design to manage the safety system. So we have considered this suitability and scalability issue. And if we, there was a slide where we were promoting the EASA management system assessment tool. We have deployed a special annex to explain what is suitability and what is scalability in terms of size and type of operation. So I do encourage you to read that document. Hopefully it is a helpful document.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Pierre. Okay, we take one more question. I think the top one we more or less answered. So SMS is an existing, if an existing SMS exists, there are different authorities involved, EASA for DOA, NAA for all others, and hence overlaps. How is a common approach reached?
I will answer that one also by saying that first, we are training our staff. The training is open also to NAA team leader or inspectors, so they can benefit from our training. And going back to the EASA management system assessment tool, it is a cross-domain assess tool. So it is supposed to enhance a standardized approach across all domains, and especially in case when an organization holds several approvals.
Okay.
I would have answered the same.
Okay, thank you very much. We've come to the time for the coffee break, so thank you, Rodrigo, Jean-Pierre, thank you, Yuri. We now have a 30-minute coffee break, so if we can be back at 11 o'clock for the next session. Thank you very much.